Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I got a viewer question the other day wanting to know what are some of the baits that I think have the it factor, meaning some baits just have that little something different about them that tend to get bit. A lot of times what you'll find are these are the baits that create a new category. These are the baits that come out and just take the world by storm, but they're not a flash in the pan. They are around for a long time. So there's a lot of baits out there that have the it factor, but very much so, not all baits have the it factor. I would say that the majority of baits, in fact, do not have the it factor. Uh, and sometimes I don't know that we actually have the answers to what makes that bait so good or what it is that makes the fish respond. If I were to evaluate the baits that I'm looking at, I think a lot of times it's the sound of the bait. I think a lot of times it's the rattle placement in the bait. So, whether it's the actual sound or maybe the rattles are moving that create a vibration in the water that triggers the fish to bite because it feels like a forage species to them. I can't give you that answer. Sometimes I think it might be the profile of the bait, which kind of can do the same thing. It can move water in a certain way that makes the fish really think that that object is something for them to eat. Maybe it's a combination of color. Maybe it's a combination of all of that, that when you put together the profile of the bait, the vibration of the bait, the sound of the bait, the color of the bait, that it does something to trigger the fish to bite. Because there are very much certain baits that just seem to catch fish better than other baits in that same category. Now, I will say that these baits aren't necessarily the best baits to throw year round, but when it is that specific time of year or you have the right scenario unfold, these baits I'm going to show you are it baits. You can almost not go wrong with these baits. Before I do get into that, though, I do want to remind you guys that I have a members only channel. So if you're looking for more content from me, check that out. Also, I haven't said this in a while, but I do actually have a bunch of merchandise as well. So I had somebody reach out yesterday wanting to know why I didn't do shirts. And I do shirts and t shirts and coffee mugs and pretty much everything. I've got a bunch of different shirts designed, and you can go to my YouTube homepage and click on merchandise, I believe, or scroll down a little bit. You can see a bunch of the different shirts that I've made that I actually wear around the house and out on my fishing excursions all of the time. So check those out as well. So this video, like I said, came along because I thought it was a great video suggestion by a viewer yesterday who said, "I want to know what some of your it baits are." And one good way to determine, at least with the professionals, what their it baits are for them is to see if they're actually using them under tournament situations. It's one thing to definitely talk about product in videos, but it's another thing when you see them using baits when money is on the line. That's a good way to determine, hey, that really must be a confidence bait for that angler, and it bait a lot of the times. So let's dive right into this. And I'm probably going to have a bunch of you guys that get mad at me because, again, this bait I've talked about before is not, it's a discontinued bait, so you can't buy it. This is the Xcalibur XRK50, so it's the one knocker. I don't know what it is about this bait, but it has that it factor. In my opinion, it is probably the number one lipless crankbait like ever been made. If you were to talk and do a poll of fishermen that like to fish lipless crankbaits, this is it. And for me, I've thrown tons and tons of lipless crankbaits, but one good way for me to have the confidence to say that this is an it bait, I've caught 3 of my top 5 biggest bass ever on this bait, and it would have been 4 of my top 5 ever had I landed one giant that I had on at the Harris Chain of Lakes that was probably pushing 10 pounds. Uh, but this bait is just one of those baits that I can't necessarily say if it's the profile. You wouldn't think that anything is all that different on this versus other lipless crankbaits. Maybe though, maybe if you've just got this little flat spot or the width of the bait is 100, of a 100th of a 64th, 1/64th of an inch wider, that creates a different water push and therefore the fish pick it up different. I don't know what it is. If you were to ask me, I think it probably has something to do with rattle more than profile. But this is just, in my opinion, the greatest lipless crankbait that's probably ever been made. At least I haven't seen a better one that excels in pretty much all situations. And I know Booyah still makes one. I'm sorry, Booyah. It's not the same for me. I don't catch the fish on that one that I do on this. The weights are different. If you look at the packaging, one says a half ounce, one says 5/8 ounce. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I don't have the luck on it. I have paid top dollar for these on the secondary market just to make sure that I've got a stash of them waiting for me in tournament situations. So that's one bait. Another bait is this guy. So this is the Berkley Maxent, the General, the 5-inch size. For me, this bait has the it factor. Now, I know a lot of you are probably like, well, Matt's sponsored by Berkley. I am sponsored by Berkley, but this bait is dominating all over the place. You look at guys, like, just look at tournament wins that have happened on it. I won a tournament on the Mississippi River on it last year. John Cox has won like 3 tournaments on it. It is a tournament winning bait. But this is why I'm going to say it has the it factor. I love fishing clear water. This bait I have had more times than I can count where I have thrown this bait out. I'll see a cruising fish that's 20 or 30 feet away. I did not cast at the fish, didn't see the fish. The fish didn't know my bait was there. Maybe they heard the splash, but this bait will land. I'll catch a fish off to the side, and all of a sudden that fish will change its direction and start to track and look for that bait to the point where I'll just let it sit on the bottom and that fish will eventually find it. Now you could say that's the Maxent disbursement on it, very much could be, but I also think there's something about the profile and the shape where the fish will go over and eat that bait. I cannot tell you the number of times this has happened to me. I have a clear water creek. It's really a creek. It's barely wide enough for me to take my boat up that I fish a lot of times. And it is gin clear water. And I'll throw this bait up and I will see fish come out of nowhere and find that bait. Not that my bait is floating by it. My bait might be 10 feet away and it's just like the fish sense it, smell it, see it. I don't know, but they love it. For me, this is the only soft stick bait I throw, and you know that based on my tournament situations again. I think if I had a secondary choice, I would throw the Senko. That was the bait that I started throwing. It took me a long time to get the confidence to throw this over it. But I don't even carry a pack of Senkos in my boat anymore. That's how much I love these things. And to me, it's got the it factor. If you talk to a lot of the other pros that use this, there's a very specific reason why we throw this over other soft stick baits. Another one that I think has withstood the test of time and is a great one that has the it factor, it's the old school Storm Chug Bug. This guy, again, there's something to it. This is one I just pulled out of my tournament box just to show you. So this is my tournament top water box that I carry. And I've got a whole section dedicated to Chug Bugs. I probably have 10 of them in here. This is probably my favorite, chrome with the blue back. It's just one of those baits that, again, creates a sound, creates a profile that it still catches them. Now, this is the discontinued one. Storm still makes one, or still makes basically the same bait that works great. I happen to be a little bit more fond of the old pre-Rapala versions, but even the new ones still catch a ton of fish. And this is a bait that does not get the love that it deserves because there's still so many top water baits that come out every year that everyone wants to be using. But I can't tell you the number of guys that still revert to this and how often I see an old school Chug Bug on the deck of a tournament boat for one of my events. I use them all the time. There's something to the sound of this bait. That's all I'm going to say. I think, again, it has to do with the fact that rattles in there and that when the bait sits, I personally feel like it has a very slight side-to-side roll in it based on that rattle, and that creates a little bit of vibration that triggers the fish to bite. But it's a dynamite top water bait that has withstood the test of time. Man, I don't know. It's probably been out. I mean, I was a little kid. I remember watching TV fishing shows, and one of the commercials was the Chug Bug commercial. It was like the spitting, walking, popping, twitching thing. They call it Chug Bug. I had a T-shirt for a while with it actually on there too. So that's another bait that has the it factor. I won't sing to you guys anymore. This is another one. So this is a new one. I'm not going to take one out of the package. This is just the Depth Sakamata Shad. when it comes to your minnow fishing and forward facing sonar and all that, I tend to feel like presentation is the key. But I feel like this stupid bait just encourages more of those fish to bite. So if your presentation is right, if you've got fish that are coming up to look at your bait and turning away, I think that's great. That shows that your bait is definitely doing what it needs to do to get the interest. But for whatever reason, there's something about this bait that seems to trigger them to strike. And there's a reason why right now. I mean, I don't know the percentage, but I'm willing to bet you that almost all of the top minnow fishermen out there have a bait rigged with this. They may have 3 or 4 rods rigged, and they're going to have one that's rigged with a version of the Sakamata shad. It's also in a very short amount of time, so it's only been out. Well, I don't know how long it's been out. It's had a lot of uh, fame and use over the past year. We've already seen multiple companies that are making pretty much exact knockoffs because there's something about this bait that gets them to bite. I don't know if it has to do with the way their tail, the split tail, or the fact that it's got those little wings that, again, I personally, in my opinion, what it's doing is it's moving water. Remember, bass feed through their lateral lines. That's how they track things. And if you get the right type of water movement, it's got to do something to trigger that fish to think that it's a real forage species, a real target for them to eat. And I feel like that happens with the depth Sakamata shad. And then the last one I want to mention, this is one that over the last several years has become much more popular. Uh, and it's a bait that I will say probably was on the chopping block with Berkley, but the pros clamored to bring it back because we've had such good luck with this. It just hasn't reached the mass market. And that's, I think, more to do with the fact that it's a niche bait. But this is the Berkley Spin Rocket. It's a prop style bait. And this is one of those baits, again, when I mentioned earlier today, you don't necessarily pick up a bait that has the it factor and just go throw it and catch fish. But if you have the right situation and the right bait, that's when you really see that a bait has the it factor. And for me, if you're talking about pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn period, this is a bait that has the it factor. I've gone all over the country and used this and had crazy success in situations where I've been able to, again, visually sight fish with other baits that show zero interest. You throw this over there, twitch it, they come flying at it like they've never seen a bait before. So a fish that has just denied 3 or 4 other baits, pick this up, and I've just had insane good luck. And it's one of those baits over the last, I've been throwing it for the last probably 3 years now, where I've really just been able to experience how valuable this bait is. If you were to ask me what it is, I think maybe it has to do with the long profile, but more than anything, I actually feel like it's these plastic props that don't create the same flash that a normal metal propeller does. They actually kind of just dissipate in the water. They kind of become a little bit more invisible. And I think they just create a really nice sputtering action that is very much like fry flopping on the surface. Again, the it factor, if we all knew what the it factor was, everyone would be making baits that specifically matched or made the it factor. We don't know what it is. I think more times than not, a bait is created that has the it factor, and it takes it a lot of times it takes a pretty good amount of time for people to even uncover that bait or use that bait, let alone even figure out how good it is to even recognize that it has the it factor. I think that's why we see a lot of baits sometimes actually end up going on the on the chopping block, where companies want to discontinue them or get to the point where they actually do discontinue them, and at that point it's after the fact when we actually even recognize that it has the it factor. But man, when you find a bait that has a little something special about it, it's one of those things where sometimes you just feel like you can't do any wrong. And I'm gonna add one other thing with the it factor. There are a lot of times where you can buy, and this happens more times than not with hard baits, you can buy 2 of the exact same bait, and one of them will have the it factor and the other one doesn't. That is a major key if you're looking to be super successful in tournaments. When you find a bait that is outperforming others, especially if you're doing it in practice, mark that bait having the it factor and only pull it out in tournament situations, because you don't want to lose that bait while you're just out fun fishing. So let me know, guys, what are some of the baits that you think has the it factor? There's a lot of them out there, and a lot of baits that have the it factor for you probably don't have it for me. But in general, these are some of the ones that I absolutely love. I'll put links to the ones that are available in the video description for you if you want to check them out. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate all the support. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.